The EU should have never allowed the UK to join. A perspective on sabotage, Brexit, and future lessons for Europe. The United Kingdom's entry into the European Union (EU) in 1973 was initially hailed as a significant step toward greater European integration. However, with the benefit of hindsight, it becomes increasingly clear that the EU may have made a strategic mistake by allowing the UK to join. Throughout its membership, the UK often seemed more aligned with its transatlantic ally, the United States, than with fostering genuine European unity. By admitting the UK, the EU effectively invited in a saboteur, a member state that frequently obstructed deeper integration, often at the behest of US interests. Brexit, which saw the UK exit the EU in 2016, epitomizes this betrayal. As the adage goes, rats are the first to abandon a sinking ship, and the UK's departure underlined this sentiment, leaving the EU to manage the consequences of its own decision. The UK as a saboteur in the EU. From the outset, the UK was a reluctant participant in the EU. Despite being a member, it resisted deeper integration and sought to carve out special exemptions and opt-outs. One of the most significant clues to the UK's true intentions was its refusal to adopt the euro, instead retaining the pound sterling. This decision went beyond mere financial strategy. It was a political statement that the UK did not see itself as fully committed to the European project. While other member states worked toward a common currency to promote economic cohesion, the UK's refusal should have raised alarms within the EU. The fact that the UK remained outside the Eurozone suggested that it was, in effect, a Trojan horse, a tool of US influence placed within the EU to undermine its unity from the inside. The UK also resisted other key elements of European integration. For example, it stayed outside the Schengen area, refusing to participate in open borders, which undermined the principle of free movement that is central to the EU's identity. Additionally, the UK's foreign policy stance often aligned with that of the United States, raising questions about its loyalty to the EU. A glaring example of this was the UK's support for the Iraq War in 2003, in stark contrast to the strong opposition from key EU members like France and Germany. This alignment with the US demonstrated that the UK prioritized transatlantic ties over European solidarity, reinforcing the notion that it was not a genuine partner in the EU. Brexit, the ultimate abandonment. Brexit can be seen as the culmination of decades of British ambivalence toward the EU. By choosing to leave, the UK exposed its lack of genuine commitment to the European project. The referendum campaign itself was rife with misinformation and political maneuvering, often fueled by a nationalist agenda that painted the EU as an overreaching entity infringing on British sovereignty. In essence, the UK used its departure to disrupt the EU and prove that unity was fragile and that member states could, and would, leave if it suited them. The UK's decision to exit left the EU to manage a host of problems, from renegotiating trade deals to recalibrating its political influence in the world. The Brexit process also exposed vulnerabilities in the EU's cohesion and its ability to respond to internal challenges. The departure underscored the idea that the UK had always been a reluctant partner, willing to undermine the Union when it suited its own interests, and acting more as an agent of disruption than a force for European unity. The sabotage of Nord Stream, a lesson for the EU. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines, which were crucial for the supply of natural gas from Russia to Europe, particularly Germany, serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of European geopolitics. The attack on Nord Stream has had a devastating effect on Germany's economy, which was heavily reliant on Russian energy. As the economic backbone of the EU, Germany's decline has had ripple effects across the entire continent. While the culprit behind the sabotage remains officially unidentified, many speculate that it was done to serve US interests, aiming to weaken European dependence on Russian gas and increase reliance on American energy supplies. This incident should be a wake-up call for the EU, demonstrating how external actors, like the US, can manipulate internal divisions to their advantage. The Nord Stream sabotage illustrates the dangers of allowing external influences to exploit European vulnerabilities, a lesson that Germany and the wider EU must heed if they hope to maintain economic stability and political independence. Germany's plight. Will the US come to the rescue? The question now is whether the US will support Germany in its economic free fall or leave it to struggle alone. The answer appears to be the latter. The sabotage of Nord Stream seems designed to weaken Germany's position within Europe and increase its dependence on U.S. support and energy. However, there is little indication that the U.S. intends to offer any meaningful financial bailout or assistance to Germany, leaving the country and, by extension, the EU in a precarious situation. The EU must now confront the reality that its economic powerhouse has been severely weakened and that U.S. interests may not align with those of a stable, independent Europe. Turkey's shift to Asia, a missed opportunity for the EU. Turkey's experience with the EU further underscores the Union's flawed approach to membership and alliances. For years, Turkey sought to join the EU but was consistently rebuffed, often on grounds of political, human rights, and economic concerns. Feeling snubbed, Turkey gradually shifted its focus toward Asia, forging new economic and political alliances with regional powers and investing heavily in its own defense industry. As Turkey's strategic interests evolve, it is increasingly distancing itself from NATO, an organization it views as an instrument of U.S. military and economic influence. If Turkey decides to leave NATO, it could mark the beginning of a broader shift in global alliances, further diminishing the U.S. and EU's influence in Asia and the Middle East. Turkey's pivot is a direct consequence of the EU's short-sightedness and inability to incorporate a crucial regional player into its fold, thereby losing a valuable ally. Conclusion: the decision to allow the UK into the EU may have been a mistake that the Union is still paying for today. The UK's actions, culminating in Brexit, have demonstrated that it was never truly committed to European unity and may have even acted as a saboteur on behalf of US interests. The fact that the UK never adopted the euro should have been a clear warning to the EU that it was dealing with a potential Trojan horse within its ranks. The Nord Stream sabotage should serve as a warning to the EU about the dangers of external interference and the importance of safeguarding its own economic and political independence. Moreover, Turkey's pivot to Asia reveals the cost of the EU's failure to engage meaningfully with potential partners. As Europe navigates these turbulent waters, it must reassess its strategies and alliances to ensure a more stable and cohesive future.